Howdy folks, first video for a few days. We are in the Flight Design CTSL. It's a little composite ultralight aircrafts, which is, there's a bit of a theme with flight sim, isn't there? They've got quite a few aircraft similar to this, and I'm really enjoying flying them. So we're on runway 14 here at Queenstown. It's a bit of a drizzly kind of a morning here in Queenstown, and we're going to do a very short VFR flight to Alexandra. So we're going to get airborne. We'll be a left turn out here on this side of the Remarkables. We'll follow the Korora River out to the Bungee Bridge, through the Korora River Valley to check out the Nevis bungee jumping area, and make our way to Roaring Meg, then Cromwell, and then down on following the Clutha River to the Clyde Dam, and make a landing in Alexandra. So here's the aeroplane. We can see that it's interesting sort of body shape, and a couple of distinctive features about the aircraft aside from that fairly bulbous sort of fuselage construction. There's these little winglets we've got on the end here, which will be good for aerodynamic performance, and also you can see similar to the DA20 because quite this tapered fuselage here, we need quite a bit of extra surface area for the directional stability on the airplane. We've got a fixed rudder trim tab, so there's no rudder trim, but we do have a movable elevated trim tab here. And one really cool feature about this aeroplane is it has a negative flap setting, so you can see that there. So it actually goes to -12. So we could kind of use these like a speed brake, which will help us to go down in a great hurry. So otherwise there's 4 stages of flaps. We'll set flaps 15 for the takeoff. And here we are on board. We can see it's a very simple cockpit layout with just airspeed balance ball here and altimeter, vertical speed indicator, and just some basic engine instruments, pretty similar to the Piper Cub. It's got a Rotax 912 engine, so we've just got T's and P's here and a basic GPS Hobbs meter. And here's our flap indicator. The brakes, interestingly, are not toe brakes, but they're actually controlled via this little lever here. But because of the modelling of my toe brakes, you can see the animation's a bit squirrely, but that's what that is there. And that's about it. One more feature I'll just point out before we get underway is I did mention in one of the previous videos, I think of the DA20, that I was talking about circuit breakers and how the aircraft has resettable circuit breakers. And I'm not sure if this is a feature of the real aircraft. Presumably it is, because it's been modelled that way here, and it does seem to be quite an accurate depiction. Is that these switches for alternator and generator and battery are actually resettable circuit breakers. So that seems a bit of a bizarre system design, that you wouldn't just have a switch, you'd pop a circuit breaker to kill your battery. But in any case, we can see that does work, so we can pull out that generator 30 amp breaker, and we see we get a generator alarm light here showing that the battery is now not being charged. So we can pop that in. So that's kind of an interesting feature, just your standard left right mags and the starter there. So that's about it. One VHF radio. We've got a simple transponder. We'll just leave that in 7000, even though we would use 1200 in New Zealand for VFR. And that's about it. So I've done the pre-takeoff checks. We're all good to go. And we'll get track IR turned on there. I'd like to just bump up my seat height with the spacebar, and then I've assigned a key to just drop that down a bit. So we can see we've got a little bit of drizzle around, but generally not much wind. As you can see, the windsock, we've got this big bloody crane here, so we'll obviously want to keep an eye out for that on our way through. It looks like a little bit of lightning down to the south. So slightly lower visibility conditions, but generally the mountains keep the terrain, it keeps the clouds pretty high, so we should be fine. So away we go. It's only RPM to consider here, so it's just smoothly through to full power. And I've only flown this aircraft once before, and I found it's got pretty awesome performance off the bat, so get airborne pretty quickly. And I'll just clean those flaps up straight away. So we can set a fairly steep nose attitude. Should be getting a bit of sink there. And just try and get a few hundred feet, and then we'll start a left turn. Clear on the right, that's Deer Park. Start our left turn.
Flight Design Delta Mike Oscar, continue for east departure. I will contact you next when you leave my airspace.
Okay.
Queenstown Tower Flight Design Delta Mike Oscar, continue for east departure.
Okay, so this is the Korora River as it drains into Lake Wakatipu behind us. And it actually branches into the Shotover River. So the Shotover River is coming down here from the north, joins up with the Korora, and together they flow into the Frankton arm of Lake Wakatipu. But that's all behind us. We can see here's Lake Hayes over here, Slope Hill, Morven Hill just here, Coronet Peak on the left here, the ski field. Alright, so we'll keep ourselves pretty low for this flight so we can take in the scenery. So I will level us off, but there is quite a bit of turbulence and quite a bit of wind coming off these hills around here, so there's something to keep in mind. So my target altitude's around 2,000 feet, but I'm not going to be too picky about that. I found the aircraft's got quite a nose-high attitude in the cruise, so it just seems to sit a little bit higher than I would typically expect it to be honest. So I'm just getting a bit of nose down trim in here to help us get that level flight going on. That's the rising sun over there through the mist. Alright, we're just about there. Alright, interesting morning with a bit of cloud making its way down through, sorry, the light making its way through the cloud down over the ranges here, very spectacular. That's Arrowtown out to our left in the corner of the Wakatipu Basin there, heading up towards the Cadrona Saddle, and just in front of us here, this is the Crown Range. We can see the road going up over the Crown Terrace here, and it will cross the Crown Range at the Crown Saddle. It's just here, we'll fly past that shortly. Just on our nose is an area known as Bungee Bridge, is the visual reporting point, and that's actually the site of a suspension bridge over the Kawara River, and that's now the home of the original bungee jump in Queenstown, set up by A.J. Hackett many years ago, and that bungee jump is 43 metres high.
Delta Mike Oscar, you are leaving my airspace. Frequency change approved.
Okay, that's good. Get rid of this guy.
Queenstown Tower Flight Design Delta Mike Oscar frequency change.
So that's just down here, we'll see that shortly. So this is called the Gibbston Valley, this area that we're just approaching here. And it's known for, Central Otago, this region of New Zealand, is known for its wines. It's obviously not a huge area, so there's not mass production of wine, so it means that they tend to be pretty high quality and fairly low volume, so the prices are pretty high if you see those in restaurants around the world, but the wines around here are definitely very nice. The main wine grape variety in the Central Otago region is the Pinot Noir grape, which is a fairly light red wine, and that makes up about 70% of wine production according to Wikipedia, and the remaining 30% is a mixture of whites, and that's really everything from Sauvignon Blancs and Chardonnays to Rieslings. So they cover the full spectrum, but the Pinot Noir is definitely the most abundant grape grown in the valley. So we're entering the Gibbston Valley here. We can see the Bungee Bridge just coming up on our left down below us, and I always wondered whether I'd be able to fly an airplane down there, and not sure if I can fly into bridges in the sim yet. Let's see if we can get a better look at this place. So that's the visitor centre there. You can see the buses park up and people jump off the bridge here, 43 metres as I mentioned. And this is Gibbston Valley Winery just here, and there's a little cheese factory there as well, I think, but it's all very small. You can see they process the wine there, and they'll get grapes from other parts of the region. There's the Kawara River. And so all the way down this Gibbston Valley here are just very small vineyards, as I said, predominantly growing Pinot Noir grapes. So we'll just zigzag our way down the valley here. You can see the State Highway 6 is the road running along here. And yeah, so wine production around here is one of the key businesses aside from tourism. And we can see there's the Crown Saddle just there. So if you get into that, or cross that, it leads you into the Cadrona Valley. That takes you all the way to Wanaka at the northern end. But so that's the short way to get to Wanaka, both by air and by car. And obviously we're taking a slightly longer route by following the gorge here down to the south of Wanaka and tracking east towards Cromwell. So there is a set of power lines that run up this ridgeline here, so if you're tracking along this valley on the right, then you do have to be aware of those as you cross that ridge. So we can see all the vineyards here. So these are all grapes being grown in these various vineyards. Some of the terracing, it's a little bit like rice paddy terraces, isn't it? But yeah, that's all grapes, and it's quite a cool part of the country. They do get snow here in the winter. The Pinot Noir grape is quite a hardy grape that doesn't mind the colder temperatures. Obviously, they're not growing in the snow, but through the sort of the cooler autumn months and the summers can get quite hot and dry. But it's a fairly resilient grape, so they tend to do quite well down here, to be honest. So I've got my old VFR sectional chart here, so I'll just refer to that from time to time. I dug it out of my old shoebox, and so we're coming up to this big elbow in the Gora River here. It's called Waitiri, and so just on the right hand side of that is the Nevis. Now it could be a bit tricky to find it actually, so I'll try to endeavour to not fly us into a mountain while we look for it, but the Nevis is the biggest or the highest bungee jump. I believe it's the highest in New Zealand. That may well have changed, but that's a 134-metre leap, and it's just a gorge. And there's this little cable car that goes out over the gorge, or like a gondola, and it just heads out to the middle of the gorge, and you leap out from there with a 134-metre plunge, and eventually get brought back up into that gondola, all going well, and make your way back over to the hill. So it's just around here somewhere, so we'll have a little look around. So this is Waitiri, this corner here. So the river's actually tracking back this way, so it's quite a hard sort of turn in here, sort of like a hairpin turn. So we'll see. It's probably this dirt road here leads out to the bungee site. I presume it's not actually modelled, obviously, the bungee thing, but you never know what the satellite image has actually got in it and what we'll see. So we'll just have a look. It's probably this valley here, but not necessarily, so just need to be mindful of the terrain. Let's see what we can see. Yeah, I can't see much there. Looking for any kind of evidence of man-made infrastructure in these valleys. So we'll do a reversal turn in this valley here. So I'm pretty sure it's behind us, so we'll just hug this hill face here and bring around. We should be able to turn comfortably inside the terrain here, so we'll just bring it back around here. Because I don't have a good horizon, the tricky part is just maintaining altitude, so I'm just keeping an eye on my altimeter there, making sure I'm not climbing or descending too significantly to maintain my speed. Obviously if I'm climbing, then I will be losing speed, and if I am descending, I'll be accelerating. That will increase my radius of turn. So I'm using all of the room here, and I'm just using it all so I'm not rolling into that turn and raising the nose. So we didn't slow down. We could have slowed down and done a tighter turn radius there, but you can see that worked out. Just. Yeah, I can't find it exactly. I'm pretty sure it's just in this valley here, but I reckon that road leads to it. But anyway, it was pretty optimistic to think we might actually find it. Oh, wait on. There it is there. Okay. So you can see, that's just an artifact in the satellite image, but you can see that's where that cable car would cross over the gorge, I'm pretty sure. That's the visitor centre. Cool. So, yeah, if you looked at it sort of from the top down, then that's about where it would go. So that's it. So that's the Nevis. And so Waitiri, so we'll make our way further up the valley here to the next little landmark is Roaring Meg. So there is whitewater rafting that you can do on the Gora River here through some of the more turbulent sections, but there's also some sections which are just going to be a little bit too extreme for the average tourist. So you can see these sections here pretty calm, but it's a relatively fast flowing river. However, the water's very cold, so you definitely make sure you've got your wetsuit for that one. Now, all of these sorts of activities, the bungee jumping, the whitewater rafting, are all available. So you can see there's a bit of whitewater through there to do in the Queenstown region. Okay, so we'll see if we can stay on the right hand side so we get a better look at the river as we go through Roaring Meg here. So some of these, this part of the gorge is it's quite narrow, so you do tend to get a little bit faster flowing water. See through here there'll be some rapids and some more up here as well. Yeah, so I'm quite enjoying flying this little aeroplane. It's a bit slower than the VL3 that I've been flying lately, but it's nice. It's a leisurely pace, good for sightseeing, easy to fly. The aeroplane's mostly made of carbon fibre. In fact, the CTSL, I think the CT stands for Composite Technology, and Flight Design, who makes this thing, were originally in the business of making hang gliders and paragliders, as I understand, and then got into making the light aircraft, and they've since built about just about 2,000 of them, delivered to about 42 countries around the world, so obviously pretty successful. Okay, so this is Roaring Meg, and I think it was actually an old power station, yeah, so just down here through these rapids, historic building. So we continue making our way to the east to exit the Kawara River Valley here, and at the end of it we're going to find the township of Cromwell. And our destination is Alexandra, and but one of the key landmarks we're going to pass just shortly after we come out of Cromwell there is we'll follow the there's a branch that comes out of the bottom of Lake Dunstan, which we'll see shortly, and that leads into the Clutha River, and the main landmark around here is the Clyde Dam. And the Clyde Dam, so most of the power production in New Zealand is hydroelectric, right? So we have big lakes with big dams that are used for generating electricity through the turbines at the dams. And the Clyde Dam was one of the more significant dams in New Zealand, but most of the power lakes and the hydroelectric power generation is actually further north in the middle of the South Island, just in the Alps actually, which we could explore in a future video perhaps. But this one that we're going to, Clyde Dam, was built between 1982 and 1993, but we can talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes once we get closer. But Lake Dunstan, which we'll see shortly as we get past this ridge here, was actually created by the building of that dam. So the dam has led this water to sort of back up behind it, flooding these plains here, and that's what's created Lake Dunstan. So Cromwell's a little township here, and so as we come into this part of Centro Otago, we switch from growing grapes to growing fruit. So all of these fields you see around here is all for fruit trees. So it's things like apples and more the autumnal type fruits, because it does get quite cool down here. So it's going to be things like peaches and nectarines and apples. So these are all fruit trees. Okay, so here's Lake Dunstan, and there's a little airstrip here. The racecourse is just here, and there's an airstrip, so we'll do a quick overfly of the racecourse. So you can see the strip is just a long grass strip running along here. And this is, the township of Cromwell. And one of the landmarks as you enter Cromwell, I think it's on this side, is like a apple, a pear, and a big giant apple, pear, and something else. I forget what the third fruit is. Some big fiberglass fruits to welcome you in. It's actually a cross victor, so you've got this short runway going this way and a longer one here. So if you want to recreate this flight, you can do a touch and go down there. And it's a good little hub actually to explore. So if you carry on up this way, pretty low visibility towards the north there, isn't there? So if you follow Lake Dunstan north, you get to a little break in the road called Terrace, and if you turn left there, that'll take you all the way into Wanaka. So in bad weather conditions like it is today, when you can't get over the Crown or Cardrona Saddles and fly down the Cardrona Valley to Wanaka, then you'd come out to Cromwell and go the low route through here, because the terrain is a bit lower. You don't have to cross over the ranges. Okay, round we go. So that might be the fruit there. I think it is. That's where the 3 fruits are. Pretty cool. Very funny. Okay, so there's a bridge that crosses over the bottom of Lake Dunstan here, and so that becomes State Highway 58, if I'm not mistaken, golf course. So you can see it's just a small township, predominantly supporting the fruit growing in the region. So if we follow this sort of southern arm of the of Lake Dunstan, will lead us into the Clutha River and eventually the Clyde Dam. So we'll see that once we come through this valley here. Drag out my map here again. There was some names for some of these things. So this is Mount Dunstan. Obviously the lake is named for that, and there's a smaller spot height here. So the top of that Mount Dunstan is 5,479 feet up in here, and this smaller one just on the southern side of it is called a leaning rock. So I'm not sure, presumably there's maybe some sort of rock up there. So you can see there's trails running all through the hills around here. Yeah, so here's State Highway 58. So while we're on our way to Alexandra, Alexandra is sort of one of the more significant towns in the region, and there's a little township just next to the Clyde Dam we'll see shortly called Clyde, and that was populated really for the building of the dam, because it took so long, about 10 years, to build the bloody thing. Many of the people that were building it, obviously they had to live around there because they were there for a number of years, so really that settlement is still there. Actually, this is an interesting geographic feature of this region of Central Otago, is where the light's sort of shining off the hill face there. It's actually rocky outcrops, and you see these all the way through the Otago region, or Central Otago, so that's sort of captured by the satellite imagery. And one of the interesting features of the area is when you're flying around Queenstown and tracking west into the Southern Alps, it's these very rugged, snowy peaks, really like Alps the world over. It's just massive mountains, glaciers, really interesting features. And as soon as you come out of the Kora Valley, which we just did, into this sort of Central Otago, this main region, part of the region, the terrain does change. Obviously we've still got some pretty significant terrain features here, but they're not these big sort of jagged mountain peaks and glaciers. It's much drier, characterized by this rocky schist outcrops everywhere. It's more of a tundra covered hills, as opposed to these sort of glacial carved peaks. So it's quite a distinctive change in geography, and it's a very dry area as well. They do have quite I think Alexandra is one of the highest hours of sunshine in the country, and even the rainfall on the west coast of New Zealand out towards the Sounds, Milford Sound and so on, is extremely high, up to 10 metres a year, maybe more, whereas this region, being in the east of the Alps, gets a nor'wester wind, so it tends to be a lot drier with a lot lower rainfall. Anyway, a little bit of a few factoids for you there. So as we make our way down here towards the Clyde Dam, we're just seeing the sun coming up over the ridge there. Yeah, so it's quite nicely depicted, and I've got Update 4 installed. I haven't noticed any real difference, to be honest, but most of the issues that people have been reporting I haven't noticed too much myself, because I don't really fly the jets, and so far hasn't affected my flying too much. A bit disappointing that they forgot, or there was a mess up with removing the press any key to start screen, but such is life. It'll be removed at the next update, which is no big deal. One thing I would say about this aeroplane, which I've found kind of strange, just the decision-making process with the Asobo developers. You know, as much as we've complained about sort of the lack of detail and modelling of certain cockpit features, you know, they've kind of put time into some things but not others. And so here's an example for you. Is we can see that this little panel here, we've got these switches, lights and so on, and down here we've got this intercom panel. Now this is functional, so this is what you'd use to communicate between the two people sitting in the aeroplane. So this is how you could isolate, say, the pilot's radio from the co-pilot. So if you were talking on air traffic control, then you'd flick that up to isolate, and then the passenger wouldn't hear you communicating to air traffic control and so on, and you can adjust the volumes independently. Now obviously in the sim that is totally redundant feature because there's nobody here, okay, so there's no one to talk to. So having a fully modelled intercom panel with both volume knobs working and the isolation button and the light, all of the time that's gone into designing that, programming that to work, was completely wasted because it serves no useful purpose. However, the switch here says intercom, so that presumably that turns this panel on. That's not modelled, yet it's exactly the same switch as these ones right next door, which do work. So why you would not just make that as a functional switch, which pretty much all the purpose it would serve is to turn that light on, so you could push that light would turn on. You know, why go to the trouble of modelling that panel with all those knobs that work and this button does something, and then not model that switch there? You know, like who made that decision? It just seems a bit of a bizarre kind of thing to leave out if you're going to go to the trouble. Right, but anyway, that's my little gripe for this session. So here we can see this is the township of Clyde, and Alexandra is just over here, so we'll find that in the gloom shortly. And the dam we've missed, so we'll have to flick back to find the Clyde Dam. But this is the township of Clyde, and so you can see, yeah, it's just a very small little village really, with just the standard New Zealand wooden houses. So we'll do a quick reversal turn and take a close look at the dam. And you know, the thing to bear in mind is this is not a 3D modelled dam. This is just an interpretation of the satellite photo made by the AI, which is a golf course, which is pretty impressive that they can, you know, just look at a photo and then create some sort of 3D building out of it. So I'm not expecting to see the dam modelled in great detail, but as we finish our orbit here, we will get a better look to see how well it's done the job. Just bring this power back a bit. Yeah, so as I said, this little village sort of sprung up for the building of the dam. And there's the dam. Okay, cool. So we can definitely see the dam. Okay, so we can see the dam just on the nose there. I'm just going to continue that left turn so that we can do a right turn back over top of it. Okay, so obviously it looks pretty atrocious because it is just a satellite image that's been turned into a dam, but you know, that's not bad, is it? It looks like there's actually, it's the photo is captured when water is being let through the sluice gates there. It's got 4 turbines, so that's pretty cool. Actually, that's pretty awesome. This bit here is a bit weird, but generally you can't really fault them for giving it a good go. So that's the Clyde Dam. And we'll make our way over to Alex for the landing. So Alexandra Airport is it's kind of a bizarre airport. It's got quite a long seal runway and a small grass cross vector, like many runways in New Zealand do. And you really have to wonder what the point of it all is, because there's not a lot out here. So I guess it was built to service the building of the dam, but you know, it's a pretty good airport. It's just up on this plateau here. We'll start to see it come into view here. And there's not much that's going on there nowadays. And there has been talk over the years of actually expanding the infrastructure there and making it into the main airport for the Otago region to service Queenstown and Wanaka, but I think you'd be hard pressed to do that with the in fact there's the runway there, sorry. You'd be hard pressed to justify the spending because it is still quite a drive to get from here to Queenstown or Wanaka, and you know, there's RNP approaches, and even you can operate at night into Queenstown these days as well, so there's probably very little justification for investing any money into this airport, but you never know. Maybe it'll happen one day. So yeah, we can see it's just up on this plateau here. It's a lovely airport and a lovely region, very quiet, mostly farming around here, but it's a dry, dusty old part of the world. So there's the township of Alexandra just up here, and this is just sort of heartland New Zealand. This is really what most of the South Island is like. It's not all big mountains and glaciers. It's more like this, to be honest. Alright, so we can see we've got runway 1432, and this little short grass cross vector here is 3618. So we can see the windsock there is looking like there's a bit of a southerly, so we can actually make our way around and just probably land on the grass crossing vector this way onto runway 18. So that's what we'll do. So we'll just continue into a downwind here. I'll reduce the power a bit. For a low level circuit. There's a little Aero Club building here. I've actually slept in there one night. And I came in here in a Piper Cub on a trip around New Zealand. And parked the aeroplane in the trees just in here. And we stayed the night in the Aero Club building there. Okay, brakes checked, undercarriage is fixed, make sure we don't have, fuel is on, and hatches harness is secure. Okay, just bleeding the power off so we can get some flaps out. Very hard to know what the flap operating range is because this white arc starts way down here, and you know, if that's the stall speed, then it seems pretty tight to be putting your flaps down like 10 kilometers an hour above your stall speed or 20 kilometers an hour, so I think I'll do a little bit faster than that. And we'll start making our way down. Okay, here's the runway, so we can see the runway just going along here. It's quite a short runway, but this aeroplane's got pretty good short field landing performance. So we've got 2 stages of flaps out, flaps 30 at the moment, got 5 degrees to go. Just making my way across the base turn, we'll start our turn to final. Okay, here's flaps 35, and I'm just targeting probably, let's say 80 kilometers an hour now. So obviously going a bit quick. So there's a nice cloud build up through there. We really need a jet like an L39 or something, don't we, so we can go hunting around in the clouds. I thought this latest patch had fixed this building height issue, but it doesn't seem to be the case yet. Okay, doesn't really want to fly much slower than this, so 90 kilometers an hour seems good. Got a fairly high rate of descent, but this feels okay. I'm just aiming to touch down just on the other side of the runway here. It's quite a high nose attitude. Bit of crosswind from the left. Power's idle. Holding it off. She goes. Flaps up. Wow, look at that. Very short landing. Cool, so here it is. We made our way to Alexandra. So that was a bit of a scenic around the central Otago region, just taking out a few of the sites and landmarks. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. If there's anything more specific you'd like to see, go ahead and drop us a line on one of the Facebook pages for Microsoft Flight Sim on a few of those. or just in the comments for this video. Okay, thanks a lot.